Hello, I am Sister Martina, and this is the second meeting of our series about Christian virtues. As we spoke in our first meeting, the saints tell us that the most precious things we can obtain in this life is this peace of spirit. I don't know if you say this in English, but I think so. If we are happy or not, it doesn't depend on us. But if we have this peace of spirit, this clean conscience of having done in life, in the many circumstances of life, the best that we could, in spite of our faults, in spite of our limitations, this is, the saints say, the most precious thing we can keep from life. And in this sense, we see that virtue that gives us this peace of spirit is something independent from the circumstances that surround us. We are not honest because the others are honest. We are not truthful because others are truthful. We are honest and truthful because, as a principle, we are honest and truthful because we see and we know and we believe these are good things in themselves. It doesn't matter what the others do or what they will say. We observe in our modern society that we are surrounded by sometimes enormous pressures of manipulation, emotional manipulation, political manipulation, all kinds of philosophical manipulation. We are more and more we find ourselves more and more in situations where we cannot say really what we think. We have to say what others expect us to say, or otherwise we have problems. We are not free anymore in this sense to follow our own conscience, to follow, for example, our own faith. We have to be very careful with what we say or what we believe because society somehow tends to pressure us constantly. And exactly the opposite of this is virtue. Virtue is a moral strength, something that comes from inside myself, from God actually, but that I feel in my soul and in my heart, which makes me free and sovereign, independent to do and to say what I really think sincerely that's the best thing to say. If this is not the best thing or not, this is a thing, of course, that we can correct, that we can listen to the others, surely. But not losing this independence, not doing things just because everybody says so, everybody does so, or I will be criticized, or I'll be praised. And this seems very simple, but it's not. It's an enormous temptation in life to do things because we are going to be well seen, we are going to be praised, or we are going to be persecuted, and so on. So virtue is this enormous moral strength that has nothing to do with power, with money, with violence, with power over others. On the contrary, it has to do with something interior, something that's inside my heart. And we observe generally that the most virtuous people are the ones that are more patient, that are more merciful, that are sometimes more silent, that are humbler, that are modest. And on the contrary, the people that are, when we are full of vices, we tend to be exactly impatient, rebellious, aggressive, violent. And this has to do with weakness, actually. Strength is in virtue. Strength is much more in things that don't make me seem very great and very good, because strength and virtue has to do with God. I am just the servant of God, the child of God. We could also think or ask, virtues is not the same thing as ethics. Thank God we still have ethics in some of our universities and so on. And of course it's very important. But ethics, as good as it is still missing something. Because of course if you go deeply philosophically into ethics, what you end up by asking yourself is, where does it come from? Why should I be honest? Why should I say the truth? In order to live in society, because otherwise it's not possible to live in society. Yes and no, because so many times exactly by being truthful and honest, I have problems. It's not always, and perhaps it's actually the minority of the cases in which I am honest, I am truthful, and because of this, I live well. No, on the contrary, many people who are corrupt, who are full of lies, and who live for money and so on, have a much better life than honest people. So, what is the sense of having ethics? What is the sense of having these virtues? When we don't believe in God, when we don't believe that there is God who is good, who created us and who waits for us, and there will be a final judgment where things will be then shown, as Jesus says in the gospel, everything that is now hidden will be shown, with ourselves too. That's why we must be careful and fear God, in this good fear of God. If we don't believe in that, then actually, really, everything is relative. I mean, in the end, there is no sense in being good, and much less sense in being good in spite of being persecuted, in spite of suffering. And that's exactly where faith comes. Faith tells us people without faith can be virtuous. Of course, they can. God is still with them. Through natural law, but faith clarifies to us, faith shows us the way, why virtue is important, where is God talking to us in our heart. Virtue can be defined then as this opening of ourselves to God, opening ourselves to what is good, and of course what is good is God in the last instance. And this we have to do, we have to train it somehow. It's not easy, of course, because it's not falling into vice, into what is comfortable or easier. Easier is to do what everybody does. Easier is to seek praise from others all the time. To do what is good in spite of all the sufferings that we can have because of it is difficult. And virtue is a good habit of exactly acting in life always, not because of others say, not because of our own comfort, but because of what is good, seeking God or seeking what is good in each circumstance of our life. And vice, on the other hand, is this bad habit of, on the contrary, always looking for what is comfortable, for what gives me a superficial pleasure, and so on. We see then that virtue and vice have everything to do with humility and pride. The virtuous person is always a humble person, is someone who doesn't put himself in the center, but recognizes that above himself is what is good, what is just, is God. And when we are proud, when we put ourselves as the center of things, then of course almost automatically we go on, we begin to live not anymore according to virtues, but according to vices. Virtue is constructive, virtue liberates us, virtue is life, and vice is, we know that, death and destruction and sadness and destruction even of the most human things in us. Virtue is making us more human, making us better, making us kinder, making us more deeply human, because exactly we are more similar to God who created us. And virtue is, we can say, this answer that we can give to God. We are saved through God's grace. God is the one who calls us, who accompanied us, who gives us everything we need, but he leaves us free. God does not manipulate. God does not oppress. And that's why we sometimes tend not to listen to him, and we listen much more to the voices that are shouting on our ears. God speaks softly, so to say. He's always there, but he speaks softly. And virtue is this answer to God of saying, in spite of everything, in spite of all the suffering that can come to me, in spite of all that other people think or do not think, I will do that because I know that that is good, that that is what God is asking me. And in times of crisis, this is what maintains us, actually. Virtue is actually simplicity. God is not complicated. We are complicated. Every spiritual life that is very complicated is always putting us away from God. God is simple. Simple not in the sense of being naive. No, simple in the sense of true simplicity. Of really saying, as Jesus says, yes, yes, and no, no. May your yes be yes, may your no be no. Everything else is already not coming from God. So let's try in these times of crisis to see in our ways always what is, or try to see what is good, what is God asking me in this moment, which is normally something very simple and not something complicated, something that we can do that is already there in our hands. Otherwise, God wouldn't ask us to do that. So see you in our next meeting. God bless you all.